Hey guys, if you haven't heard yet, Unreal Engine 5 Preview 1 is out, and it boasts a lot of exciting new features and updates. The one we are going to take a look at today is World Partition Landscape Support. Last year I made a video going through Unreal Engine 5 Early Access discussing how World Partition didn't support landscapes yet. In particular, it didn't support generating HLODs for landscape tiles in the distance. World Composition did handle this, so it was a bit disappointing that World Partition did not. Today we are going to test out the expanded landscape support for World Partition in Unreal Engine 5. So what I've got here is a third-person template project. I just loaded up the editor, created a third-person template project, included the starter content. The first thing that we need to do is we need to use the Convert Level tool to convert our map to World Partition. If you don't do this, everything else is going to fail. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually have it create a new one rather than in place. And we don't need to delete the one that's there. It's going to put underscore WP on the end of it, so we'll be good. So it's running the script, and the conversion was successful, and it automatically opened the new map. You can see here it's got underscore WP. If yours doesn't have the underscore WP, it probably didn't work. Okay, so what we want to do first is we're going to need a landscape to be able to test this. And so we're going to come into landscape, and we're just going to move this down to 0. For some reason they start with 100Z, not sure why. And the only setting we're going to change is we're going to change from 1 to 1 section to 2 to 2 sections. This will be big enough for what we want to do. And we are going to pick a material. Because we did the starter content, there's this m underscore ground underscore grass, and we're going to hit create. Now, because we did this after the world partition was done, it's going to automatically handle that. But we need to come into this world settings. Now, this world settings and world partition, they may not be open in your browser or in your editor. So if they're not, the world setting is right here, and the world partition editor is here. I have data layers out open, but you don't need those. We're not going to touch them in this. We need to come into this world settings, and there is a world partition setup here. And you'll notice that there's runtime hash. We're going to just open this up. So one of the things that I did find is that if these numbers were not like the right values or the right ratios, it just wasn't working properly. And so at least to start, use the exact numbers I do. And if you modify the numbers and you notice it's not working, I had that problem too. So I'm going to start here though real quick. And just so we have something to look at in the distance, I'm going to quickly, going faster here, I'm going to quickly just create an outline, kind of like mountain ranges in the distance, so that we can see this when we're in the game. Otherwise, it's just going to be a flat surface and we won't be able to see anything. So this is just going to help us have something to look at as we're doing it. So these are supposed to be like mountain ranges in the distance. Okay, so we're back to these settings. The settings that I found that worked well was to leave this world partition editor cell size at 12,800, and then double that in the cell size here. So this one becomes 25,600. And then for the loading range, I think I was using 57,000. I don't think that loading range is going to be as much of an issue. Whereas it did seem that this editor cell size to this cell size here, if those were not that ratio, I was having really weird things happen. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Still looking into it. So we're going to hit save to save those values. If we had edited this cell size, it actually says we have to reload the editor, but we didn't. We just edited this. And then what we're going to do is we are going to go to, let's see here. There is a default HLOD layer, okay? And I played around with this a lot where I created a layer. Let me just do this real quick. I wasn't planning on this, but I want to show you because it's really weird and you're likely to run into this problem too. So I went in here and I went to miscellaneous. This is how we did it before. And I created an HLOD layer. I called it landscape layer. And I thought, okay, I want these meshes to be simplified, right? I want it to run a vertice reduction. So I'm going to want to choose simplified mesh. And then I came in here and I put in, the settings I wanted. I used the same 25600. And I adjusted this the same way, like 57,000. I came into the proxy settings and I played around with making it a nanite mesh. I removed this collision. I played around with different, if you do this nanite mesh, you can do different levels of reduction. So I said like, oh, let's do like 5%. None of that was working. None of that was working properly. But what is working for me is just coming in here and just choosing this HLOD 0 instancing. Which, if you open it, you'll note it has no settings. It doesn't say to load spatially. It just says instancing. So I almost think that the way it's currently set up, and I'm still looking into this, is that the landscape has hard-coded stuff and it's not even looking at those values like non-landscape actors are. So it took me a while to figure that one out, but that seems to be the state of it right now. I'll let you know if I find anything additional. So that being said, we're going to hit save, and I have some scripts here that I'm going to need to edit. And so one of the things that was happening before, and this took me a while to fix, is that previously this map name was sitting right after the U project. And when I would run it, it would give me this error that said world not found. World not found. Well, I looked in the code for the commandlet and found out that for some reason it now has to be the last. It now has to be the last. I guess they're calling it a token. So if it has the dash in front of it, they're calling it a parameter. If it doesn't have a dash in front of it, they're calling it a token. So it has to be the last token. No idea what's going on there. I don't know if that's an error or not. But I do need to come in here. My test project was World Partition 01, and now that I'm doing it again to show you guys how, it's going to be 02. So what I've got here is I have 4 commands. They have to be run from this folder, basically the engine binaries Win64 folder. So you need to, I use PowerShell, and I've got it sitting here at M program files epic games UE5 engine binaries Win64. So you got to be in that folder before you can run these, and then you'll notice there's a full path to the U project, and because it's just a PowerShell thing, because the path has a space in it, it will consider that the end of the path, so we have to put double quotes around it. So you can see there's double quotes around it. And okay, we're just get third person map, looks good. So this one runs the setup. This one does the build. If you need to redo it, you have to run the delete one, the delete command first, and then go and do it again. And this final one here actually does the minimap builder, but I'm going to show you there seems to be some problems with that, or something's not configured right. We're going to start out with doing the setup. Okay. Yep. So you'll notice I made a simple mistake here where I changed the O2 in the project, and I did not change the O2 in the folder name. So make sure you get these paths right. Otherwise, you're going to run into some trouble. The setup runs pretty quick. It's the build one that takes the most time. Depending on the size of your world and the speed of your computer, it could take a significant amount of time to build. I think in this case, it's probably only going to take a minute. So we'll let it run. I'm not going to cut the video. Let's see what else here. So the minimap builder is interesting because it kind of works. It's just it's starting from origin and only going in the positive direction. Oh, it's actually already done. Well, that was quick. Okay. And now we're going to do the minimap builder. And you'll see in a minute when actually, I'm surprised that this did not air out. I was supposed to close. Yeah, I was supposed to close the editor. So yeah, before you do these steps, you're going to want the editor closed. I'm actually really surprised that the builder ran, although it's possible that that was an error. If it's a problem, we'll have to go run it again. I meant to close the editor. I think it's got files locked is what happens. So we're coming down here, and we're going to open up test world partition. Oh, not the right one. We need to load test partition 2. Okay. Yeah, so you can see here, this is supposed to be the, yeah, it's the wrong one. I didn't get it killed fast enough, I guess. But you should see the same thing. Okay. So we go to world partition. World partition's not enabled for this. Okay. So what happened here is that it went back to third person map. We can actually quickly change that by coming in here to maps and modes and just choosing the WP one. That'll fix any future loads, but for now I am going to have to reopen the WP. Okay. And as you can see, it did the same thing the other one, where it's just filling, it generated a mini map, which is basically a 2D texture of like a top-down view, and you can see the grass there. It didn't fill the whole thing for some reason. So I played around with it for a while, couldn't figure out what was going on. I'm just gonna delete this, that I can access it easier from underneath. Yep. I'm just gonna dump that, and I don't want to not be able to get out of this area. So that's gonna be good. Okay. So we now have our world partition, and you know, we can go here and we can load and unload cells. If I select some here, I can do unload selected cell. Yeah. There we go. It doesn't go all the way to the end, and we can load the cells back. Okay, so one of the things to note is that it created these HLOD things. These were created by those scripts that we ran over in PowerShell. And they contain, well, we can't open them here, but I'll show that once we run it, we can open them, and they contain the proxy meshes, basically. But we have to actually hit play. In this mode in the editor, when you're not playing, it's not loading HLEDs. It's always loading the full landscapes. Okay, but we're gonna hit play. It's not a big deal. You can ignore it. It's just because this material was not meant for an instanced mesh, which is what this thing ended up creating. It doesn't mean anything. And so what we're going to do as a way to get further away, oh, first I want to show you that these now load. Okay, so if we go to one of them, you can see that they have a landscape mesh in them. One of the things I don't like is the fact that you can't actually go see that mesh because it's under the editor map one file per actor system, and so you can't actually go and open it. I'd really like to go and open it and look at it and see, you know, what's in it and stuff like we could do with the old generated ones, but they don't show up in the content drawer, right? So if you go looking for them here, you won't find those HLOD meshes. They're there, but you won't find them in the content drawer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit F8, and this will allow us to fly out. And you'll notice that they're loading in and out. And so what we can do is we can go to wireframe, and I wish I had done a closer value. I'm not super happy about the value I put in, that 57,000. Let me see if I can fix that temporarily. Just because the viewing it in wireframe, you're not getting the look that I was getting that I was hoping for. So it must not have been 57,000 I used. It must have been a closer value. So I'm going to go back to world settings, and I'm going to open back up this runtime hash. Oh man, I thought it was 57,000. I'm going to go with that 25,600. I mean, this is not something you'd realistically use, but my hope is that will allow us to get a better view of what's going on here. Let's see if that did it. Yeah, it didn't. Okay. Well, I think I can still show you what there we go. This is the look I was looking for. So one of the things that's cool about this is that before, when we would build proxy meshes that replace, which are what these ones here in the bluish green, is they wouldn't line up at the edges, and in spots you could potentially have a seam, right, where you could actually see through because it didn't line up nicely. Well, what's cool here is that the landscape is now nicely lining up. You can see that it feathers out to the edges, and the edges are nicely lining up to it. So in this case, what's happening is that this is the landscape. These are the replacement proxy meshes. And because of that, and I can show this by going to bringing up stat RHI. And so you can see here that, let's just say it's roughly 70,000 triangles drawn. Okay, we're kind of at a corner view here. We're viewing the whole thing at 70,000. Just this one is a landscape tile and the other are proxy meshes that are being replaced. So if I now hit stop and we just instead go up here in this same map, kind of get the same kind of view, you can see that instead of 70,000, it's like 244,000. And that's because in this case, they're all landscapes, and in the other case, they're a mixture of landscapes and proxy replacement tiles. So anyway, so it still looks like there's some things that are a little bit odd about how it's working, but the functionality definitely seems to be there. I'll keep playing around with it, but I just wanted to let you guys know that that's working now, and that's how you can start playing around with it, with those settings and those scripts. I'm going to bring this script thing back up here so you guys can see it real quick in case you need to copy these out. It's basically running the Unreal Editor command, and then in double quotes you've got your U project. You have to do -run, and it's the World Partition Builder commandlet. You have to allow commandlet rendering. I saw a note that said you didn't have to do that anymore, but I left it in because it was something you had to do previously. And the note only says that you don't need allow commandlet rendering in the setup. So I just left it in. Whether that's needed or not, I don't know. Then we've got -builder equals World Partition HLODs builder. So this is the program it's running. And then these are this is the command that you send to the program. It like runs a certain part of the program. So you have a setup HLODs, you have a build HLODs, you have a delete HLODs, which is what I would have to run now if I wanted to do this process again. So I guess technically like this one should be first, right? The delete is first, but you don't run that the first time you're doing it. You start here, run this one, this one, this one, and then to start again, you go back and run the delete, the setup, the build, and the minimap builder, which, as you can see, is not fully working. And you can it's in here. World Partition Minimap is an actor, and you could see it built this texture, but it only populated that 1/4 of it. So it's kind of weird. I played around with these UV offsets to try to see if that did anything, but when I put the values in and ran the script, they just got overwritten. So there's something else going on. Maybe one of you guys can figure out. If you do figure it out, please post in the comments, just in case you figure it out before I do. That will be really helpful, because that'd be pretty cool if I could, if we could get that working. It is neat that, it makes it easier here for working on this, but I also was wondering, like, can this mini map, which is actually a virtual texture, which is pretty cool. That was a new thing they added. I saw it in the notes that they converted to a virtual texture. I wonder if you could actually use that same virtual texture that is generating, that's a real virtual texture here, if you could use that to also power, say, an in-game mini map. Definitely something I'm going to be looking into. But if you guys figure it out, please put it in the comments so that I can take a look at it, and I'll help everybody else too. I am going to be looking into a lot more of these items. I've actually got 2 other videos already looking into more items that are changes they've made in UE5. There's a really good list here of ones. We're going to take a look at, let's see what else we're going to take a look at. This new large world coordinate system, we're going to take a look at that. And then on Lumen, really exciting. Lumen now has landscape support too. This was big, it was missing, it was horrible, caused a ton of problems. That's now there. I did look at this hardware ray tracing support, still playing around with it. Initially, it didn't look so great. We will see. Might be something I'm missing. But watch for the next few days. I'll be doing throwing out short videos as I figure out things. So until next time, see ya.